Big titles, big roles, but what do they actually mean? I'm Ines Hiraki, and this is From Wall Street to Main Street, breaking down business jobs one conversation at a time. Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing great. Today, we are in the fourth episode of our series, and I find very funny how everything is coming in together. We had the chance in the past episode to discuss audit with Derek and also corporate ethics with Professor Mark Tasse. And today, we're discovering forensic accounting, which comes right in the middle of everything. So, forensic accounting is where numbers meet human behavior. We go beyond the spreadsheet to analyze how it works in real life. And today we have the chance to welcome Olivier Poitras, which is a senior associate at PwC in forensic accounting. So, hello, Olivier. How are you today?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's nice to
Thank
be
you
here.
for being here today. It's really nice to have you. And today you're going to talk to us about
Mhm,
forensic accounting. So, first of all, we're just going to start a little bit about your background. So, you can maybe start about a little bit where you studied,
mhm.
how you came into this path, and everything.
Yeah. So, born and raised in Montreal. I lived a few years in the U.S. when I was in elementary school. My mom got transferred there, and my dad is in aviation, so for him it's easy to switch places. We came back when I was 10 years old, more or less, and then I did my whole French studies, so high school, CEGEP, all that, and university. And then I ended up doing my bachelor's in accounting at HSC, my DSS in French, so the Superior Studies course to become a CPA. I've been at Price for 2.5 years now, more or less, and about 15 months in the forensics department.
Okay, perfect. So
Mhm,
you told me you studied accounting. So
mhm.
like other, you could have choose tax or audit or traditional accounting. So what made you choose forensic accounting specifically, and how did you know it was the right path for you?
So for me, originally when I was like in high school, CEGEP, law was very interesting to me, but I never wanted to be a lawyer. Right? If I had my choice, I would have been a judge straight out of school, which unfortunately you can't do in Canada. Apparently, in other countries like France, you can, but here you can't. So, being a lawyer was not at all my style. So, I decided to do accounting instead. And in one of the intro classes of accounting, we had a teacher who went through like all the different types of um, sectors of accounting you could do. And one of them was forensic accounting. And she's like, oh, this is like the law mixed with numbers. So I was like, oh, perfect, right? So that night I went online, looked it up, looked at what it entailed, and I was like, oh, this was very interesting. So I talked to a few people who were in the industry, and it was very interesting. So when I got to Price, I immediately applied. I told my coach at Price, hey, I want to try this, and then I was put in contact with the team, and then eventually I switched to forensics. So
So when you first joined Price, you weren't in a forensic, you were
I was an audit.
in audit,
Yep, it
and
was
then
the
you
classical
switched.
course of
Okay,
yeah the schools push for audit very hard. It used to be the only way to have your CPA. Now you can do it through other means, but it's still the classical way of becoming a CPA. So
okay, and I find it really interesting how the professor showed you the different type of accounting, even if it was like a short line on the
yeah, it
slide.
was it was a one sentence on a PowerPoint, but it was enough to get me interested in seeing
Yeah.
and to actually doing research and looking into it. So yeah.
Okay, perfect. And now that you've been in the job for over a few months and a few years, what is one misconception that people have about forensic accounting, or even that you might have had before starting this job?
So I think, and people think it's only about the numbers. And as you mentioned in your introduction, there's the whole human behavior aspect to it. So people think, and yes, we're accountants, we work in Excel, we do have spreadsheets, that's life. But there's the whole social aspect to it of understanding how humans function, why they do what they do, understanding, I don't want to say behavior because we're not like psychologists, but just enough to understand why people are motivated to commit fraud or anything else. So there's the whole social part. You have to be ready to talk to people. It's not just behind the desk, right? You talk to people, you do interviews, and you have to be ready to have people who are not happy to see you, who might yell at you or even swear at you. I haven't been threatened yet, but I've heard stories of
Not yet.
not yet. We're not there yet, but it's a part that you have to be ready to face is that you won't be hiding behind a screen all the time. There will be face to face interactions. And so you have to be ready for the social aspect of it.
Okay, perfect. I want to dive more now into the job of forensic accounting. Let's start, for example, just the word forensic accounting. It sounds very Netflix documentary. It sounds very catchy. I just want to know what is behind it. So, what is forensic accounting, and what do you do on a daily basis exactly?
So on the next Netflix part, forensics is, yes, crime scene investigation, whatever. And the word that's important there is investigation. So we do investigate, um, fraud, or sometimes more niche subjects. Like we sometimes do whistleblower cases. So it is very much the investigative side of accounting. Day to day depends. Obviously, the lower you are in the hierarchy, the more Excel you do. The higher you go up, the more you talk to clients, the more you interview, stuff like that. So for me right now, yes, I have the whole spreadsheet data compilation part, but there's also client meetings, the whole taking care of your different mandates, because it's not just one case at a time. I'm currently working on 6 mandates at once, right?
Oh,
Obviously they have different deadlines and stuff, but it's mitigating and controlling what you're working on, your
yeah.
timeline, stuff like that. And it's also reporting to the partners, because obviously at some point there is someone above you you have to report to, who needs to understand what's going on. So it's kind of that whole mix of organizing your day and knowing where to prioritize your time.
You say you work 6 Ks at a time. Don't you sometimes get confused in like in all those numbers and all those stories and all those parts? Sometimes don't you get like confused in the different parts of each story?
Not that much, because the fun thing about forensics is that it's every case is unique.
Mhm.
So we build all our tests from the ground up. So usually it's very hard to get them confused unless they're extremely similar. But
Mhm.
it hasn't happened yet where there's 2 cases that are too similar that I get confused between the two. Because again, every instance of fraud or every investigation is different, and so the context is very apparent when we're talking about our cases. So no, there's not really like a confusing part to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so let's say you're working on a fraud
Mhm.
investigation. What are all the steps from the first suspicion into until the final report?
Good question. So first of all, understanding that the first step isn't on our end, it's on the client side, right? So most corporations nowadays have, whistleblower hotlines, or have some sort of system where you can report um, anonymously findings, right?
Yeah.
So most of our cases come from whistleblowers or from um, CFOs of the boards that have found discrepancies in the books. So the first step is really client side finding the problem, because we're here, we're not at the client, so we can't see the problem at first hand. Then they call us, and then that's when we get onboarded, right? So once it gets to us, obviously there's the whole, sign the contract, all that stuff, whatever. But then it's really getting to know what the books look like, because every company has a different set of books. They're all unique, how they do their accounts. um, Understanding the what the potential fraud is, or the potential problem that there is, and then doing our investigation, a report, a what I like to call it the lawyer phase, where usually the lawyers will review the wording in the reports, because it
Mhm.
will often end up in a courtroom.
Mhm.
So we do our job, they do their, lawyers talk, kind of
Every words matter.
exactly. Where the comma is can matter as well, right? So
Yeah,
so there's a
right.
lawyer review, there's the final report that we send out, and then potentially, eventually, there could be a testimony in the courtroom if ever it's necessary
Okay.
for our clients. Yeah.
Okay. So you said you collaborate with lawyers, for example.
Mhm.
Who are the other people you collaborate? So there is lawyer, clients,
Yeah.
other departments. How are the relationship entertained?
So lawyers are always like the first point of contact usually. So either a lawyer firm, like one of the big firms in Montreal, or the internal counsel at the clients. They're usually the ones that will reach out to us and give us the mandate, and then it depends on the client. So some clients don't want to talk to us at all. It's all through the lawyers. So that can be the longer mandates, because then we have to talk to the lawyer talks
Yeah,
to
back and
them.
forth.
There's always the extra step in the middle, right?
Mhm.
So that those are the longer ones. Usually it's easier for us to get documents, because lawyers will push a lot harder. They're a bit more stern on how they talk to people. But or else it's with the clients directly, right? So usually, again, depending on the investigation, but usually we'll have the CFO or the person in charge of accounting, and then one accounting member who will give us all the documents we need to answer our questions, stuff like that. And then again, depending on the situation, we conduct interviews with different employees, try to understand what's going on. It's a very it's a hard answer to give because again, it's unique for every single situation, but the baseline is usually the higher up of accounting if it's not the person being investigated. If
Hmm.
it's that's a different story if it is, but then it would be the board directly
Okay.
if we're investigating the CFO, for example.
Why would it be a different story if it's the person that you're investigating directly?
Well, it's because if we're investigating that person, we can't ask them to help us find
Yeah.
documents on them, right? Because then they obviously will not give it to us. So
Is that a different process, or how do you deal in that case?
usually when it goes to the board and not through like the CFO, the board will appoint someone in the company, like a manager, who will help us and that who's considered like independent from the CFO,
Okay.
so that we can still get access without alerting anyone, basically.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. And so, what kind of cases have you worked on so far, and how diverse are the challenges that you face?
So obviously have to stay confidential on most of these, but some examples are for we had a case recently where there was a whistleblower that let us know that, or let the board know that there had been a bank account open in the company's name for like 25 years that no one knew about and had like a couple $100,000 just sitting in a bank account somewhere. So we kind of investigated how the bank account got opened, what transactions went in and out of the bank account. We did some interviews, stuff like that.
But
So
how did they find out about this account in the first place?
because they were on their banking like online banking website, and the bank account just showed up like
Oh, like out of nowhere?
yeah, like I'd have to go back and check, but like basically the bank had like updated their servers, and then suddenly it was a bit like it had been like hidden, and then it was suddenly
Oh,
visible again.
okay.
So that was kind of scary for them because like why is there just money? Like in
Mm-hmm.
the grand scheme of things, the amount wasn't that big for the company, but it was still like who opened a bank account without us
Yeah.
knowing. So that was one of them. We have a lot of especially with the tariffs right now. We've had a few like trade potential trade frauds that we've looked
Mm-hmm.
into. Um, there's been stuff. Well, there's those. These are more like litigation side, but there's been stuff where we had to like re redo like income statements, for example, because like they were missing income statements or had there's like 3 or 4 month periods where they don't exist for some reason.
Oh,
So doing estimations or doing our best to like look at historical data and reconstruct them from the ground up to help our clients.
okay. Okay. And so, for example, there's a lot of people that thinks forensic accounting looks a lot like advanced auditing.
Mhm.
What is the difference mainly between audit and forensic accounting?
So I think the first point is that most people don't actually know what audit is per se. um,
That's why you have to watch the episode with Derek.
exactly, exactly. But so people think audit is to find fraud, and it's not. The goal of an audit is that when someone like at the end of an audit, the company publishes the financial statements. The goal of the audit is that anyone who reads those financial statements will have an accurate depiction of the reality of the
Mhm.
company, right? So, as even if it's a small error, if it wouldn't be enough to influence someone's decision based on those numbers, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
So that's what audit's goal is. It's never to find fraud. If they do good, they'll call us, but that's not their goal. Our goal is really determining if there was fraud or fraudulent activities or misappropriation, and then reporting on it and giving our clients the tools to act on it, right? So give them a report, tell them, hey, here are your legal options or whatever. So that's really the big difference between the two.
Okay, perfect. We can also imagine accounting giving testimony in the courtroom.
Mhm.
Is it really how it works, or is it more behind the scene work?
So it can happen at a higher level. I'm a bit too junior at this point to have gone to a courtroom, but yes, like my bosses have been to court. It's relatively rare because I believe it's like something like 85 or 90% of all lawsuits end up being settled outside of court. So it's relatively rare. When they do go to court, what ends up happening usually is that the other party has forensic accountants. And usually they'll be mostly in line with what we say, with like maybe one or two variables that like change the number. When we talk about millions of dollars, one variable can change the amount by a lot, right?
Yeah.
So usually they'll plead their case. There's going to be testimony, counter testimony, like you see on TV,
Mhm.
and then the judge will decide on what number will be used or what variable will be used. But it's relatively rare. Like I've been here 15 months, and I believe my bosses have gone to court twice or three times, right? So
Okay. It's
it's
not
not
that often.
it's not that often. Right?
Okay. And I'm just curious, what's the most surprising thing or unusual thing that you saw during a fraud investigation?
So we get access to a lot of data. Sometimes it's usually not that personal because usually we have the company data. We need special legal powers to get personal data, but we have emails. We sometimes have like texts on company phones. If they are company phones, we have the text, and we have the bank statements. So we have found like OnlyFans purchases on like corporate cards before. That was pretty. It was a pretty funny find because first of all, you have to be stupid enough to actually put it on your corporate card, and someone also approved that expense, right? At some point. So that was a whole thing. But yeah, it was a pretty surprising
Do you know how it went internally?
uh no, because it wasn't I didn't directly work on the case after, but someone for sure got fired, like obviously. But
Well, two people, the person who done it and the person who approved it.
well, I'm assuming the person who approved it got I don't think they got fired because like they clearly just weren't checking, right? Like they didn't check they were just approving without
Oh,
verifying.
yeah, okay.
But what happened to the actual employee who was charging the account? I'm not sure. Yeah. So
Oh, sorry. No, that's funny. Honestly, to do that on a corporate card,
yeah, it's a bit much.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. And so let's say you do find a fraud and
Mhm.
you tell it to the client. What is the usual process after you tell them, okay, so we found a fraud, something more than finding an OnlyFans transaction, but
Mhm.
like for sure finding a real fraud about
No.
$1 million or something like this. What is the process once you tell it to the client?
It again, it depends. Usually, we have the full report. We give it to either their internal counsel or the board, and then they decide do they want to take legal action against this employee or not. Right? Like sometimes our findings are inconclusive. Because in Canada, fraud has to yes, there has to be a fraudulent action, but you have to show intent as well, right? And that's the hard part. People do fraudulent or bad transactions all the time accidentally, but proving that they actually knew that they were doing a fraudulent transaction is the hard part.
How do you prove that?
Usually it's emails. Usually they're dumb enough to write an email about it or like
Okay.
text someone about it. So that's where we go. Or it has to be so egregious that it can be an accident, right?
Okay.
Um, like you have to like buy like I don't know like a $10,000 TV with your corporate card. Like at some point, like there's like a doubt that doesn't exist anymore because you know that you
Mm-hmm.
can't do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah. So basically, we will give them the report, and then they decide what to do. More often than not, I would say they don't pursue legal action because again, it's hard to prove. But if they do, then it goes to court, the lawyers get involved, and we rarely are involved with that process after. The only time we'd be more involved is if we find something else more that is illegal and dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, without getting into too many details, like if we would find child pornography, for example, or something like that, then we'd have to report it, obviously, because that's a more serious crime, and there's a potential of a danger for a child, for example, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
it I haven't seen it, but it's happened before where they have found files of that nature
Oh,
on
wow.
investigations. So yeah, so it's not great, but in those kind of cases, you would have to declare to the police, and we have in our contracts, we have like a whole paragraph about how we you have client confidentiality up to a point.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that,
Yeah.
it would involve something else. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's
Mhm,
it. That's interesting. So many variety of things that you could discover.
mhm,
That's an interesting word, but at the same time, it seems a little bit scary
mhm.
and dangerous. I want to move on now more into some key concept that you might be using in your job. I'm wondering what are some maybe technical tools, sorry, some technical tools that you may be using. Could be like fraud
Mhm.
schemes, asset tracing, anything in forensic accounting.
So, from a technical standpoint, if you want to talk just basic accounting, I would say the most important tool is understanding how like a full transaction works. Right? Like let's say you buy inventory all the way to paying for it, then selling it to a client, and then receiving the money. understanding the mechanics of accounting, like it sounds very like cliche to say that, but just the baseline is the most important part because if you can't understand the transaction, you can never figure out what happened, like the story behind it, right? That's the technical part from accounting. Like the fraud scheme, like you think about like pyramid schemes, or whatever. Yeah, like knowing the concept helps, but you will learn it on the job.
Mhm.
A more technical point is also, it's not really technical, but writing. Writing is very important because we do write reports, right? Yes, we're accountants, but there's still the whole being able to describe what you did, what you saw, what you recorded. You have to kind of, I don't want to say dumb it down, but simplify it a bit because a judge will be reading it, right? And the judge doesn't have necessarily have those technical like abilities or knowings, right? So
Mhm.
there's also that technical aspect to it.
Okay. And you said earlier, when we were diving into other question, that sometimes you find emails, sometimes you find bank receipts.
Mhm,
What type of evidence do you work with? Is email,
mhm.
bank receipts? What are type of other things they are, and how do you connect the dots between
Yeah.
everything?
So the baseline, you always ask for like all the basic accounting stuff, right? So the trial balances, the balance sheet, income statement, the general ledgers, like the basic stuff that a company needs to run their books. It always starts there. Then, depending on what we need to look at, we'll focus more on one aspect. Excuse me. For example, we had a case where they thought that one of the executives was spending personal money like on sorry, spending corporate funds on personal trips. So we looked at, his vacations. So when he take vacations, what was he spending on? Was it a reasonable spending allocation? Because they thought that he was basically taking a corporate trip like he was supposed to, and then extending it further and paying with
Mm,
the right. So that we looked really at one, his timesheet, because like, was he taking vacation days those days, or was he actually working, right? Because that makes a difference as well. So it really depends. Sometimes if it's like inventory, and if it's like more fraudulent on the selling side, we need the receipts, we need the what they call we call the trifecta, the PO, the purchase order, the invoice, and the third one changes depending on what you're looking at, but the bill of lading, like the shipping document, basically, right?
okay.
So usually we'll connect all three of those. Does it match the GL? Can we see the money going in and out of the account? Was it paid to the right person, right? That's also a big thing, right?
Hmm.
It's easy to say, okay, the amount went out of the account, but what account did it go to?
Yeah.
So that's also a big part of connecting the dots for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And what type of tools and technology do you use on a daily basis to actually trace all of that? Is it more coding? Is it more like you're an Excel wizard? Like what type of other tools that you might be using or software in forensic accounting?
Yeah. So Excel is obviously a big one. You're never going to escape Excel in accounting, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it. Um, we do use a program here called Alteryx, which I believe a lot of other companies use as well. Basically, Alteryx lets you take like huge data sets and
Hmm.
work in them because if you open like a huge Excel, it takes forever to like
Yeah.
filter and stuff like that. So Alteryx like breaks it down like coding wise into something more simple, and then you can reconstruct what you want. For example, we have a client that I've been doing since I got here that every month we get like their whole book of like their sales and their transactions, but they don't send us just the month. They send us the whole thing since the beginning with the new month on top
Mm,
of it. So every month, like 200,000 lines get added in Excel. So we're up to, I think, 3 or 4 million lines now. So
wow.
I can't even open the Excel
Yeah,
anymore.
you couldn't open it on your computer. It's gonna
Exactly.
shut down
So it
automatically.
all goes through Alteryx. It takes like 3 minutes to run the whole thing, and I'm done.
Yeah.
And I have my full analysis. So that's more coding sided because Alteryx, unfortunately, these kinds of softwares, they're less user friendly than Excel. So you have
Mhm.
to code a bit in them,
Yeah.
but very, very baseline coding.
I think we have the training about that. Isn't it the one where you can change the input? Input
Yeah.
is again, like for example, you put like the algorithm of how do you want to
Hmm.
work with the data, for example, the filters and everything, but then you can change the input like
Yeah.
the first Excel,
Hmm.
and then you can do the same work on
Exactly.
other
Hmm.
things, other input with this exact same things, which is a huge gain of time.
Yeah. So you have to do the coding once basically,
Okay.
and then yeah, you change the input, and as long as the format of the Excel is the same,
Mm-hmm.
it works perfectly. That's what we do, right? So I get the new Excel every month from that client. It's always the same format, so just plug it in, and yeah, it takes. And the whole thing takes me, except to download it too. That's the longest part, but it takes like 15 minutes tops. And
Okay.
it's like the beginning was super long because it's a very complex Excel spreadsheet. So it took like a few weeks of like getting it working.
Mm-hmm.
But now that it works, it's 15 minutes a month and it's
Yeah,
very simple.
of course.
So there's Alteryx, and then we also use a couple email review softwares
Mm-hmm.
when we work. Uh, a lot of companies keep all their emails. So we have I've had cases where we have like over 500,000 emails to go through.
Do
Obviously,
you read all of them?
no, exactly. So the email review software will let you like remove duplicates, right? Because let's say like three people are CC'd on the email,
Yeah.
and we pull everything. Well, that's three different copies
Yeah.
of the same email.
Yeah,
So
no
it
need.
lets you filter out the duplicates,
Okay.
um, and it lets you like create what they call threads. So like the thread is like, let's say you have one reply, then two replies, three replies,
Mm-hmm.
four. The thread lets you see just the last one, so you can read the whole thing and not have to go through all
Oh
four
my god,
levels. Yeah,
yeah.
so
That's
it makes it
useful.
way easier, but
Yeah.
it's still a long process. But it's also something we use often just to,
But then you have to read all the remaining emails?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. But like you know what you're looking for as well. So like some stuff is irrelevant. So usually we have keywords that we plug into the software. So like if I want something relating to this transaction,
You can insert the word of a
exactly,
company or the account or something
exactly,
like this. Okay. Perfect. And you also mentioned a little bit of coding. Is
yeah.
that something you use as well?
Yeah, like very, very like surface level coding, like like and or statements or if statements. Like it's very, very like I did a coding class in university. Like it's the equivalent like the first 2 weeks of like class. Like
Okay.
it's very, very baseline just to understand what's happening behind because you have to understand the process that you're doing, right? So if you can code in Excel, like do like the more complex formulas, you'll be fine for coding
Okay.
in other softwares. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. And I'm also wondering, that's one of my favorite questions, is really how do you balance the quantitative analysis
Mhm.
with the professional judgment when the evidence isn't 100% clear?
So for us, we do a lot of interviews, like I said, and often in interviews, when people start feeling stressed, they'll start like telling on their colleagues. It happens a lot. Like because sometimes they think that we're there to like do restructuring or to like to fire them, so they'll start like saying stuff about other people to like make them seem better, right? It's a natural human reaction to do so.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll often hear rumors in those interviews. Sometimes those point us in a good direction. Sometimes they don't. So that's like it's a separate thing that we don't care about.
Mm-hmm.
So when we have a very interesting rumor, it can give us a huge like breakthrough in the case, but we have to prove it. So yes, there's a professional judgment. There's is this relevant? Do I want to know about this? But then I have to be able to put it in a report, and you know,
Yeah.
if it goes to court, we have to have the burden of proof, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is there's the whole side of is this useful, and it's also can I prove it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like so and so is sleeping with so and so. Super like it's tea. It's very fun, right? It's interesting, but it's not pertinent for me
Yeah.
for this
But
fraud
how
case.
would you even prove that?
You'd be surprised when people send emails like or in like Teams chats on their corporate computers. There's a lot of
You have access to all the chimps?
yeah, usually as well. Like, if we're getting access to the emails, we also have all the teams
And
usually.
do the employee get notified that all their
No,
Teams messages gonna go through?
no,
Wow, that's
no.
crazy.
Like usually companies have a data policy, so it says like anything written on like when we started here, we signed a policy as well, saying that anything we write or send on the computer can be kept by the company, and they are kept by the company. Like even if like our internal policy is that I think after a week or a week and a half, the Teams gets
Yeah,
deleted,
everything get deleted.
but it's still somewhere on a server. It's just not on our computer anymore. So they don't actually disappear. Like there we have hundreds of thousands of Teams messages that we can go through because they're saved. Like they have to save it for privacy reasons. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we get access to those as well. So it's
Okay.
yeah.
That's interesting, guys. Don't send Teams message that are suspicious on your work computer. You never know what might be happening.
Yeah. Or like, complaining about your boss or anything like that. Like we see
Our
a lot of
clients or
oh yeah.
anything.
We see a lot of stuff.
And like, not to a point to report it.
Hmm?
Like if you just see something that's you are analyzing those texts and everything, you're not part of the company. So like if you just see something
No,
that's
no, like
triggering you, you're not gonna,
no,
are you gonna tell that you, oh, there's that
no,
person said that, or do you keep track of everything that's non-compliant into the rules of and the policies of the company, or
no.
you're just looking for a fraud
No,
specific?
we always have a scope
Okay.
of work when we sign our contract. So we don't, even if it's like, unless it's like a death threat or something, then obviously we will. But if it's just like complaining about your boss or like calling someone names, it's not our problem. Like we're not
Okay.
looking at it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah.
For the next part of the interview, I want to move more into a situation
Mhm,
question just to put you on the spot and see what would you do as a forensic accounting. So, first of all, let's say you just find a number that's just off by a little, like
mhm,
not that much, but enough to raise some question. What is your first step? Like, do you double check your tools? Do you check with someone else?
mhm.
Like, what is the first step that you do when you notice that?
Well, always double check because human error is possible. It happens to me all the time. Like you, when you're coding, you misinput something or whatever. So I always double check. And then it depends after that if the client know or the person that we're looking into, they know that we're investigating them or not. Because it's not always, you don't always declare it to them,
Hmm.
right? Like for example, if here at PwC, if we get investigated by the company, they're not going to tell us immediately, right? Like we'll know after when they're done with their investigation. Same thing when we go to clients. Like we don't always just walk up and say, "Hey, we're investigating you because we think you committed fraud," right? Like it doesn't happen that
Yeah.
way. So if they don't know that we're investigating them, usually we'll do more work on our end. Obviously, it's more time and more expensive for the client if we're doing it. So we'd rather not do it that way. Usually, we try to do the we try to get explanations from the client more than us working, just so it saves them money and saves us time. When they do know that we're investigating them, we just go to them directly, like, "Hey, what's this? Can you explain this? Why is it wrong? Why did you put it in this account?" So it's a lot faster when we have direct access, but it's not always the case. So
But when they don't know that you're investing them
mhm.
and then you go to talk to them,
Yeah.
they will be suspicious. They could just look you up on LinkedIn
Oh,
and
for
see
sure.
that you're forensic
Mhm.
accounting, or they could just ask you, okay, why do you want to talk with me?
Yeah.
Or why do you want to have this conversation?
Yeah, usually what happens in those cases is that the meeting is set up by someone at the client. So like the CFO, for example. So they don't really have a choice. Like the CFO says, "Hey, like I'm here with PwC.
Mm.
Get on this meeting with me." But usually we don't give them like a heads up.
Oh,
Like it'll be like an hour before, like, "Hey, we're talking to you in an hour." Like we don't
oh,
give them like time to
that's
prepare. Yeah,
stressful.
but that's the whole point because they can't prepare.
Oh,
They can't
yeah.
like go change stuff. So that's kind of the point. It's we make sure everything's ready. Then it's kind of a surprise at the end where we just go in and
They don't even have time to look you up on LinkedIn. Who is the invite on the
exactly.
team's
That's kind of the
call?
point. Yeah. So
Okay,
yeah.
okay, that's funny.
Mhm,
Have you ever worked on a case or a story where everything changed midway through the case? For example, like you thought it was a certain type of issue, and then the more you were digging deeper, it was something else, something bigger, or something different.
mhm. So yeah, actually, there was one where kind of similar to one I already mentioned, where it was an executive who was probably spending too much on the corporate card, right? So they were like, "Oh, can you just review this? Tell us what's happening, whatever." And looking more into it, it wasn't so much he was spending too much, is that those executives in that company had like a marketing budget, basically. And we realized that he was going over on his marketing budget, and the company didn't really have a policy regarding what would happen if he went over. So they just were still giving him the funds over this marketing budget. So, and then it was supposed to come off of the next year's budget, right? So
Mm,
let's say you
okay.
have 100 grand this year and 100 next year. Well, if you went to 120, you would only have 80
Mm-hmm.
next year, right?
Okay.
So, but what happened is that because he was going over, the company was basically fronting him cash.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't that big of a deal for them at the time because it was just the one guy doing it. But if everyone was doing it, they wouldn't have cash anymore, right? So they had to rewrite their whole policy
Mm-hmm.
surrounding that. So we didn't end up finding like anything fraudulent, but it was just like, oh, this could be a problem that we should fix
Okay.
because the policy just never thought about what to do in that situation, right? So yeah, it was
Okay.
like a complete turnaround on what our mandate was, what our scope was. It's a whole thing. Explaining it to the team was also complicated because yeah. Anyways, it was a whole thing contract wise, but that's fine.
Okay. Could you share a moment where you felt like your work truly mattered, like it changed something or had a big
Mhm.
consequence into the client or the organization?
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. So oftentimes, though, I'll start with a different answer, and I'll get back to your question because
Sure.
it's pertinent for the explanation. But when we're doing a fraud investigation, when you find fraud, it's easy because then you found it, you do the report, it's done, right? When you don't find fraud, it's harder because then you have to prove that you checked everything. You
Mm-hmm.
don't just stop at a point where you find it. You have to really go through everything. So we had a client that actually um, wanted to show that they hadn't done anything wrong. Like they knew that one of their suppliers was kind of like complaining about certain things, and they wanted us to show that hey, it's all kosher, it's fine, like
Mm-hmm.
nothing's wrong. So it's a big job to do because you have to really prove to the supplier that hey, we checked every single possible scenario, and
Mm-hmm.
it ends up being clean.
Yeah, because if you're wrong, then you're lost all your credibility.
Exactly. And on top of it, they were also renewing for a huge a loan from a investor, and so um, it was like a whole like I think we did three. It was like a 3 month report. It was pretty long, right before Christmas last year, and it ended up going. We presented our findings. They ended up going to the investor. The investor even asked my boss to come on the call to like present what we had found.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up going super well. They were very happy with the report, and they even got a bigger loan than they were expecting.
Oh,
So,
that's
which was so
great.
yeah, so that was a very like fun moment. That's like, oh, we
Yeah,
actually like
that's a great
we proved that
Christmas
yeah,
gift.
exactly. We proved that it was all good and that it actually helped them a lot. So yeah.
There was an interesting part of your answer. You said at the beginning, like when you don't find something, you have to look everywhere. But when you do find something, as soon as you find it, you stop.
Mhm.
Do you actually like when you find a fraud, you stop there, or do you dig deeper or look at other departments to see if they might be other frauds? Because they might be like other fraudulent transaction in a company. So do you stop at one fraud, or do you still look at everything
Mhm.
until you find like all the possible fraud that might be
No,
existing?
so we look well. First, we go to the end of that fraudulent.
Mm-hmm.
We present that, and then we tell them, "Hey, do you want us to keep going? Because it is expensive
Mm-hmm.
to keep going." More often than not, they're happy with just the findings, and we stop there. But yeah, we do go to the end of that. We don't like actually stop. It's just that let's say I find like something fraudulent in the marketing department. I don't have to prove that I checked marketing and IT, and I can just look at the marketing department once I know it's there
Mm-hmm.
in my report, especially the longer reports, the ones where we have to prove that we checked everything.
Mm-hmm.
But no, we do go into depth into the actual transaction, and then we ask the client, hey, do we keep going or do we stop? So
Okay, so for example, let's say you have different departments to go through.
mhm,
You start with marketing, you find something in marketing,
yeah.
and you haven't looked yet into IT and all the
Mhm.
other department. Would you still look into the other departments or not?
We would ask first,
You
and then
will ask,
if they
okay.
say yes, then yes. If not, we just stop with marketing.
And they usually say no. Like imagine there is a fraud in every single department of the company.
Usually, because once we find the pattern, usually it's easy for them to check after themselves without
Okay.
paying us. Because again, like even writing a report takes like multiple like it takes a long time. Like
Mhm.
because let's say I'm writing the report, I write it, the manager reviews it, then the partner reviews it, and it comes back to us, and then there's like a lot of man hours to go into just writing the report. So it stacks up pretty quickly money wise. So and clients are cheap and reasonably so because I'd be cheap as well if I was a client. Like I don't want to spend more money than I have to. So once we find what they're looking for, usually they're okay with just stopping, and then they take care of it internally. So yeah.
I'm wondering, with your experience, what would be one red flag that you could spot on the spot and that other people wouldn't be able to see it right through it?
So something that we see, especially when the person knows that we're investigating them, is that they're a bit too. I've seen it that they're too nice or they're too compliant. Like, let's be real. No one wants to see an auditor or one of us like come out and just start like going through your stuff. It's
Yeah, it's
one. Yeah,
stressful.
well, we're in the way. It's stressful, and we're double checking everything you do. It's not a fun experience to like basically being you know asked everything you did over the last like year.
Hmm.
So when they're too like obviously like sometimes they don't care and they just want to get it over with, but sometimes it's like they're too talkative and they clearly are trying to steer you like in the wrong direction sometimes. I've seen it where like they try to like they talk about a certain thing that sounds like fun, but like you look at it and it's like, oh, he's just trying to divert my attention somewhere else.
Hmm.
So that's a red flag we see a lot.
Okay. Okay. So in his book as well, Narrative and Number from Aswadamataran, which is a professor at I think NYU,
Mhm.
he's writing about numbers and narrative, and he says every number tells a story, and every story needs number to be delivered. I'm wondering, as a forensic accountant, how do you make sure that the number that you analyze tell a story that makes sense and that everyone can understand?
So for us, obviously, we always have to find the story behind the number because if I just show up to a judge and I'm like, hey, here's this transaction. They bought this, they sold it here, they took a cut in the middle. The judge doesn't care. Like, what does this mean? Like, what's the benefit for the person here?
Yeah.
And so a big part of our job is asking ourselves why, what's the benefit? Because no client's going to write in a transaction that's not beneficial for themselves, right? Like,
Hmm.
and I say that they can still write a loss for themselves. Like they can lose money because they want to have a tax cut, for example, or whatever, right? So we just have to understand why a transaction is being done, why they're taking this detour in the books. Because most often than not, it's like there's like something that happens in the books where like they do a weird transaction, which on paper isn't illegal per se, but it's weird. It doesn't make sense. It's not efficient, and want to know why. So we find the story, and then we have to also be able to explain to someone who doesn't know accounting. So
Hmm.
for us, it's a very very important part of our team structure is asking the question why all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just like caught up to my attention when you were mentioning looking for the why during our last interview with Marc Tassé, which is
Mhm,
a professor about corporate misconduct and ethics, and he's also a strategic advisor.
mhm.
And he was saying that for someone to commit fraud, there needs to be like three aspects that are aligned, which called the fraud triangle. There needs to be like an opportunity, like to find something where he could actually do it. He needs to be able to be to take
To
relatively
rationalize.
sorry,
Yeah,
to
rationalize. Yeah.
rationalize, like saying, oh, if someone else was in my place, they would do it as well. And the third point is like they need to have a motivation or
Mhm,
they need to gain something out of it.
yeah.
And if those 3 points are aligned, almost everyone would be able
Mhm,
to commit fraud, whether you're a good or a bad person.
mhm.
It's not really related to
No.
that. Do you agree with that point, or do you feel like from the past investigation that you've done, usually all these three dots were aligned when the fraud was committed or
Yeah.
not?
I mean, for a person who's going to commit fraud, the hardest one, I think, the hardest barrier is always going to be the opportunity to do it. Because if your company has good accounting standards and has like good controllers and see it, and like people know what's going on, you will never have the opportunity to, or if you try doing the fraud, you'll get caught immediately, right? So I think that's the hardest part. So do I think that all three were aligned? Probably. Obviously, I can't know if how people rationalize it to themselves because it's in their head. But the motivation is usually pretty clear. Either, and sometimes it's something very simple, like they just had a kid, they need more money, or well, gambling issues is a different thing. But gambling issues, they just had a kid, they just bought a house, or their spouse just lost their job and then suddenly they need more money, right? So the motivation is usually it's usually more of a surprise in my experience than anything else. Or they just like having money, right? Like some people just like I like having money personally. I don't know about you, but um
Who
yeah,
doesn't?
exactly. So yeah, I would agree that for sure, like there, it's almost always present, but the barrier is always going to be, in my opinion, the opportunity. Because I think the motivation probably comes first overall. Then you have to rationalize it to yourself, and then
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
then you see if you can do it or not, right?
Yeah.
So
Oh, I think it could be like the other way. There is an opportunity that you see.
yeah, you notice it, and then you could think about it as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
And so you were saying earlier as well that sometimes you have to put a story behind the data. Do you have some time to translate even that story that can be sometimes a little bit too technical? Do you have to translate that to people who are non-financial that aren't really into the accounting
Mhm.
job? So do you have to translate all of that into writing or
Yeah.
into your communication? And how do you proceed to tell all those same information but without number and without those financial backup?
Yeah. So obviously, a lot of people that look at our reports don't have a background in accounting or finance. Some of the clients don't. There's lawyers, there's judges. So summarizing what we know is very important, and taking a step back and understanding what the analysis is about is also important, right? Like I can dump all the summaries I want on the like I can make a bunch of tables that are like they give like the total of these things and it's very pretty and it's in color. But if it's not important to the final answer of the story of the report, I shouldn't put it in the summary. Yes, it's going to be in my analysis and the appendixes because we put all our Excel sheets in the appendix in our reports. But the important part is that we summarize the important information at the top. Because let's be real as well, like not the judge probably isn't going to read all 200 pages of report. Like they don't have time for it and they won't
Yeah.
understand it. So I'd say like the first like 20 to 30 pages are the important part of the report. Make sure that the right information is at the top at the summary and that it's a simple summary and that the number at the end is very clear on what we're talking about. Like I read reports before where it's like there's like three summary tables and you don't know what the actual number that they want to show is. Like they're trying to explain too much
Mm-hmm.
at once, and it's too confusing even for me as someone who works in that field, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it really is telling the story that you were one hired to tell while keeping it factual
Mm-hmm.
and showing the numbers in a way that is easy to understand for everyone.
For the next part of the interview, I want to move more into maybe industry trends
Mhm,
and specifically everything related to technology.
mhm.
So, for example, I'm wondering how do you see forensic evolving in the future, especially with the complexity of the modern financial crimes?
Mhm.
How do you find that evolving in the future?
So obviously, it goes very, very quickly, especially with AI now and all that. We have here personally, we have our own like cyber team
Hmm.
that's like attached to forensics. So they do more of like everything that's research related to new tech. They get the licenses for us to have the new toys to play with. So they really keep up to date with what's happening. Obviously, it'll never be 100% up to date with what's going on because it goes way too fast. But I think we're keeping up to date enough where we can still, provide the service we need to provide.
Hmm.
In the next few years, it's going to go even quicker. I think. Um, every week, I feel like we have like a new thing with
Hmm.
AI that's coming out and whatever, right? So it is a challenge, and for us on my end, the challenge is understanding that technology. Because we do training, of course, but understanding why we're using the technology is
Hmm.
also
Yeah,
a big
you have to be
part of it.
open to
Yeah,
change and
exactly.
yeah, and adaptable. Okay, that's
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering as well, how do you see the future of forensic in 20 years? Do you think it will still be the same as today, or how do you see it evolving in the future?
I don't think it will be. Today, we still have some clients that use older tech. So there's still people that have everything in Excel. So that makes it harder for us to work with newer tech, right? Like if
Mhm.
it's all in Excel, I kind of have to work in Excel mostly. Um, in 20 years, I'd say probably more advanced, more people will probably be on blockchain at that point because blockchain lets you basically have a history of your entire transactions, right?
Mhm.
So I think there will be a lot more work done on that end personally. And it's gonna be completely different from now. Like I think it's gonna be like almost a completely different industry at that point compared to today. So I can't wait to see what's gonna look like, but one day at a time, just to see how it evolves and all that. Yeah.
Okay. And what will be the emerging threats and challenges that the forensic accounting might be facing in the future as well?
For me, personally what I'm seeing is a lot of deep fake problems right
Mm,
now, right? Because most companies, how it's set up currently is that let's say I want to get $1 million payment approved, well, the CFO has to approve it, right? By writing, or and then they go down. So like let's say 500,000 and up, it's the VP, and then 300,000 and up, it's the controller, like
mm-hmm.
whatever their structure
Yeah.
is. So I think we're gonna probably see a few scandals in the next few years of people figuring out ways to use AI and deepfake to circumvent those approvals. So they'll get like a voiceover from like the CFO's voice saying, "Oh, I approve this," or
Mm-hmm.
find a way to have the signatures be like stamped on without by using AI, for example. So
Yeah.
I think that will be a challenge in the future, and how we as people who investigate it know if it's real or not will also be a challenge to overcome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. That's interesting to
Mhm.
see the point of view of and how AI might be having good things to bring, but also
Yeah.
coming with some threat as well.
Mhm.
For the last part of the interview, I want to focus more into the advice that you could give to our next generation. I'm wondering, first of all, what type of profiles do you think will be thriving in forensic accounting? And what type of mindset, attention to detail,
Mhm.
curiosity? Like, what are the things that you are looking for, or that people in forensic have in
Mhm.
common in general?
So curiosity, I think, is the first one. Like if you see something suspicious, if you don't like digging a bit, you're not going to enjoy forensics. Like you have to want to go to the end of the
Hmm.
of the transaction or whatever you find, like just dig a bit and go through it. You have to like that. Um, Attention to detail. One on the number side, because we are basically saying, hey, this is wrong. So if you're saying, hey, this is wrong, then what you said is also wrong.
Hmm.
You kind of look a bit stupid, right?
Yeah.
So attention to detail and also patience, right? Because it can be very frustrating when you're doing an investigation and you don't find anything. And like I've been working on the same case for the past 6 weeks now. We're like, we know we're very, very close to finding something, but it's just that one little thing that you need
Yeah.
to find. So it's a lot of patience as well, and patience with yourself, learning, adapting, because everyone has different styles. Everyone wants different kinds of reports. So I'd say patience is a very big one that people don't think about.
Okay. And for someone who would be interested in forensic, but they're wondering if they're technical enough for this
Mhm.
role, what would be your advice to that person?
So coming back to the earlier question, I would say understand your basics. Again,
Accounting,
accounting, like super cliche, but yes,
debit,
understand the
credit.
basics. Um, exactly, debit credit. What like when you see a type of transact like a debit credit, what should be the next one after? Right? Like if you're buying something, you should have a purchase and a payable. You should at some point see a payable and some cash going out, right? Like that would be the next logical step
Mm-hmm.
in the whole process. So understanding the very basics of that. Um, I would say probably a bit of coding. Like currently it's very base level, but I feel like over the next few years it will get more and more important to know at least a bit of code,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and with these softwares that need a bit more user input coding side, just very very surface level, at least understanding what like the very very basic functions, like I said, the like what they call loops in coding or if statements or and statements ors, all of those just to know what's going on. Other than that, like more technical side, you don't need to know like this specific highly technical program. Like every company uses different programs. Like we use Alteryx, I'm sure other firms use something else, right? So I wouldn't stress too much on that end. You'll learn on the job. Like I've been here for 15 months now, and there's still new programs that I'm learning about that I'm touching for the first time, right? So I wouldn't stress too much on that part. It's really the basics and yeah, and then the curiosity behind that to learn.
So that's our last question for today's interview. I'm wondering, so if any students want to pursue this path or this career in forensic accounting, what advice would you give in terms of courses, any habits, or something, a book there they can read, a resource that would be really useful to them?
So for more course side, classroom side, there is most universities, at least here in Montreal, have some sort of class relating to forensics. I know that UQAM, which is the University of Quebec in Montreal, they have a full like actual master's course, I believe, in forensics. So that can be interesting. Go on the websites of the firms. PwC obviously has a whole forensics section on their website. Go read what it is if it looks interesting. There's also something called the CFE, which is the Certified Fraud Examiner. I wouldn't say to do the certification because it costs a lot of money, and if you're not going to work in forensics, it's not very useful. But at least go read on their website. It's called I believe the website is ACFE, Association for Certified Fraud Examiners. At least go read what it says. Maybe it'll give you a bit of insight if it looks interesting or not for you, and or else reach out to people. That's what I did. I knew people who worked in firms, so I said, "Hey, do you know anyone in the forensics department that I can talk to? Just like have a 15-minute chat or like
Mm-hmm.
a coffee or whatever." Right?
Mm-hmm.
Me, it was pandemic, so it was Teams, but but nowadays you can probably find people who
Yeah.
or friends who work in firms or something and ask around. It's pretty. People are usually pretty happy to talk about it. So yeah.
Okay, okay, that's perfect. I feel like this concludes perfectly our episode. We you gave us a little bit of resources to look into it. You gave a little bit of homework actually to people who might be interested, and I feel like we discovered all the word of forensic accounting and see really what is the difference in between audits and corporate ethics. And I love how we've been building this picture so far with all those episodes together. So I wanted to thank you for taking the time to join us on this Monday beginning of evening, end of afternoon, after work, and taking the time to discuss with me and prepare all of that episode for our audience. And I hope everyone loved discovering a lot about forensic. And Olivier Poitras, thank you so much for today.
It was my pleasure, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you.